I knew something was wrong the moment my internet slowed to a crawl, again. It was the third time this week. At first, I blamed my smart TV or maybe the old security camera out back. But after rebooting the router for what felt like the 100th time, I decided to dig deeper. Logging into the router dashboard, I scrolled through the list of connected devices. There, among my laptop, phone, thermostat, and fridge, was something unfamiliar, a device named Whitmore iPad. I frowned. I didn't own an iPad. Whitmore, I muttered, staring at the name. That was Karen Whitmore, my neighbor from across the street. The one with the pastel pink SUV, the live, laugh, love doormat, and the attitude of someone who thought the world should revolve around her. We'd barely spoken since I moved into the neighborhood 8 months ago, but she always looked at me like I didn't belong. I kicked off the unknown device from the network and changed the Wi-Fi password. Simple. Done. Problem solved. Or so I thought. The next morning, I was halfway through my coffee on the front porch when I heard the sound of flip-flops slapping the pavement like an angry metronome. Karen marched up my driveway without knocking, without saying good morning, just barged in like she owned the place. "Did you change your Wi-Fi password?" she barked. I blinked. "Yeah, why?" Her face twisted. "Because now my internet isn't working." I stared at her. "Wait, are you saying you've been using my Wi-Fi?" She scoffed like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. "It's just Wi-Fi. Don't be dramatic. You've got plenty of it. It's not like it costs you anything extra." I stood up slowly, blood rising. "That's not the point. You're stealing." "Oh, please," she snapped. "People like you always get so touchy. Maybe if you didn't want people using it, you shouldn't live in a neighborhood like this." That's when I realized this wasn't just about Wi-Fi. This was personal. Then came the threat. "You know what? I'm calling the police. You're acting suspicious. Don't think I won't report you." She pulled out her phone, already dialing 911, and smiling while she did it. "Real quick, if you've ever had a neighbor who thought your stuff was theirs to use. Comment number 1 so we know we're not alone." The smirk on her face made my blood run cold. I stood there in stunned silence as she put the call on speaker. "Yes, hello, I'd like to report a suspicious man in my neighborhood," she said, her voice trembling with perfectly practiced panic. "He's acting aggressively and might be trying to access people's personal information." I took a step back, arms crossed. "You've got to be kidding me." Karen turned her back to me, talking louder into the phone. "Yes, he's standing right in front of me. I feel unsafe. He won't stop threatening me." "Threatening?" I hadn't moved an inch. I could feel my heart rate picking up, not out of fear, but out of sheer disbelief. This woman was manufacturing a crime in real time, and she was doing it with the full confidence of someone who had gotten away with it before. She hung up and turned around, smug as ever. "You'll learn not to mess with people around here. Maybe if you acted more respectful, we wouldn't have problems." "You mean respectful like not stealing from your neighbors?" I replied dryly. Her nostrils flared. "It's not stealing. It's sharing. This community used to be about that before people like you showed up." Before I could respond, she spun on her heel and marched back across the street, as if the problem had been resolved in her favor just by making the call. I stood frozen for a moment, the absurdity of it all sinking in. She'd used my internet without permission for months, gotten caught, and then called the police on me, the actual victim. And she expected to win. The confidence wasn't just arrogance. It was strategy. I walked back inside and paced my living room, anger simmering beneath the surface. My mind ran wild with possibilities. What if the police believed her? What if this turned into one of those stories where the truth didn't matter? No. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I sat down at my desk and pulled up the router logs again. If she wanted to escalate this, fine, let's escalate. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to expose everything. I started scrolling through the router's history, diving deeper than I had before. Her device had been active almost every night, long after midnight. Odd for someone who claimed she just borrowed Wi-Fi for light browsing. The first few entries were typical: social media, shopping sites, streaming services. But then things took a darker turn. I found activity linked to online forums. Ones with names that sent a chill through me, places notorious for racist content, conspiracy theories, and hate speech. I clicked further. She wasn't just reading. She was posting. Dozens of anonymous comments, all spewing bile about immigrants, minorities, and neighborhood purity. She was active in threads about taking back America, linking to fringe content creators and hate-filled videos. And then came something worse, way worse. Buried in her traffic logs were payment trails. Cryptocurrency wallets linked to shady marketplaces. Orders for fake IDs. Listings for stolen credit cards. There were traces of phishing schemes, fake charity scams, and usernames associated with dark web blacklists. What had started as a stolen Wi-Fi incident was quickly revealing a full-blown cybercrime operation. I stared at the screen, horrified and fascinated at once. Karen, the same woman who just tried to paint me as a criminal, was running some sort of side hustle that could easily land her in federal prison. And she'd been using my network the entire time. Which meant, the evidence trail would point directly back to me if anyone ever came looking. Unless I did something about it. I grabbed a USB drive from my drawer and began taking screenshots of everything: timestamps, URLs, device names, even the MAC address tied to her tablet. I archived everything into folders, labeled by category: hate speech, fraud, identity theft, potential child exploitation. Yeah, that last one wasn't a typo. There had been a login attempt, one time, late at night, to a site flagged for trafficking explicit content. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Just seeing the name was enough to make my skin crawl. I stared at the USB in my hand. What started as a slow Wi-Fi connection had just spiraled into a case file. And Karen had no idea she just handed it to me. A knock at the door broke my focus. I peeked through the blinds. 2 officers. One black. One white. Standing on my front step. I took a breath, pocketed the USB, and opened the door. The taller of the 2 officers stepped forward, his expression neutral but alert. "Good morning, sir. I'm Officer Daniels, this is Officer Grant. We received a call about a possible cybercrime incident originating from this address. Mind if we come in?" I gave a nod, keeping my voice even. "Of course. You're welcome to take a look. I've got some information you'll probably want to see." Officer Grant, shorter, stockier, and more skeptical, gave me a once-over as they stepped inside. I could feel the tension humming beneath the surface. Karen's story was already at work. The question was, had they bought it? "What exactly happened?" Daniels asked, as I led them toward my home office. "Well," I began, motioning for them to take a seat. "Yesterday I noticed my Wi-Fi had been acting weird. I logged into my router and found a device I didn't recognize. Turns out it belonged to my neighbor, Karen Whitmore." "Whitmore," Grant muttered. "That's who made the call." "Figures," I said. "Anyway, I kicked the device off and changed my password. This morning, she stormed onto my property, yelled at me for changing it, then called you guys, claimed I was hacking into her devices or something equally absurd." Daniels arched an eyebrow. "Do you have any proof of her using your network?" I sat down and reached for the USB in my pocket. "Not just proof she used it. Proof she used it for things that should concern you a whole lot more." I plugged in the drive, and the folder tree loaded onto the screen. "I pulled connection logs from my router," I continued, clicking open the first folder labeled Device History. "This MAC address here belongs to her iPad. Logged in under the name Whitmore iPad. Here's a timestamp from last night, when she was streaming, browsing, and doing a whole lot more." The officers leaned closer as I clicked open the hate speech folder. Screenshots filled the screen, comments from anonymous accounts, but all traced back to activity through my IP. Racist slurs, conspiracy posts, threats against public figures. Officer Daniels gave a low whistle. Jesus. There's more, I said grimly, clicking into fraud and scams. Cryptocurrency transactions linked to this IP. Several accounts associated with selling fake concert tickets, phishing schemes, and what looks like identity theft. She used online marketplaces to offload stolen goods, maybe bought through fake credit cards. Grant crossed his arms, now fully alert. And this all came through your router? Yep, I said. All while she piggybacked on my connection. I didn't even realize it was happening until the slowdown forced me to check. I hesitated a second before opening the last folder. This one is disturbing, I warned. Inside was a single screenshot, just a log entry. A midnight login attempt from her device to a flagged website. The domain was already on a federal watch list for hosting explicit and illegal content. I hadn't opened it. But the attempt alone was enough. Daniels and Grant exchanged a grim look. If you think Darius handled this like a pro, go ahead and tap that like button. You do realize, Grant said, that if this is accurate, it's enough to trigger a full investigation. That's exactly why I saved everything, I said. She's trying to frame me. I needed to protect myself. Daniels leaned back slightly, exhaling. You're saying this woman used your network to commit cybercrimes, then called us to accuse you of doing what she was actually doing? That's exactly what I'm saying, I replied. Grant looked skeptical for a moment, but he wasn't dismissive. Do you have any idea why she'd do that? I gave a dry chuckle. Because I cut off her free internet. And because I'm the wrong color in her eyes to be living in this neighborhood. Neither officer said anything for a moment, but I could see something shift behind their expressions. It wasn't just about stolen Wi-Fi anymore. It was about someone using their entitlement, and the police, as a weapon. Daniel stood. We're going to need to speak with her. Gladly, I said. I followed them out to the porch. Across the street, Karen was already outside, peeking through her blinds like a nosy sitcom villain. The moment she saw the officers cross my yard toward her driveway, she stepped outside, arms folded, lips pursed like she was expecting applause. Officers. I'm so glad you finally saw reason. She began, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. Did you confiscate his laptop? I assume you're pressing charges? Grant held up a hand. Ma'am, we have some follow-up questions for you. Do you mind coming with us for a few minutes? Karen blinked. What? Why me? I'm the one who called you. Daniels didn't break eye contact. And we're following up on both sides of the call. I stood silently on my porch, arms crossed again, just like when she first confronted me, but this time, the balance had shifted. She looked at me, then at the officers, then back at me. And for the first time, I saw it, doubt. It crept into her features like a crack in glass. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Daniels nodded. Ma'am. Now. Karen's jaw tensed. And then, like any entitled bully whose bluff had just been called, she stepped forward, but not to follow orders. To escalate. Karen stomped forward like she was the one in charge. You're making a big mistake, she said sharply. He's the one doing something illegal. I told you, he threatened me. He hacked into my personal accounts. You need to check his devices, not mine. Officer Grant didn't flinch. Ma'am, we've reviewed his network logs. We have reason to believe your device was connected to his network without permission and used to access several flagged sites. Karen froze. That's ridiculous. He's a hacker. He probably planted that stuff to make it look like it was me. Daniels remained calm but firm. We checked MAC addresses. The device in question identified itself as Whitmore iPad. That's consistent with your name. Karen blinked. Anyone could have named a device that. True, Grant said, but it also matched the exact MAC address found on his router logs, tied to sessions going back over 3 months. You can't spoof that kind of consistency unless you've got some serious tech knowledge. Do you? She scoffed. Of course not. That's what he does. He's probably been watching me through my own camera. That's why I called in the first place, Her voice rose to a near shriek, drawing the attention of a few neighbors now peeking from behind curtains or pretending to water their lawns just to listen. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to say a word. Karen was unraveling on her own. "Ma'am," Officer Daniels said firmly, "if you'd like to make a formal statement, we're happy to record it. But if you continue to make accusations without evidence, that will be noted." Karen turned to me, eyes wild. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? To humiliate me? To set me up?" I held her gaze. "No. I just wanted you to stop using what wasn't yours." Then she lost it. "He's dangerous," she screamed, pointing at me. "You don't understand. This is our neighborhood. He doesn't belong here. He—" "Karen," Grant interrupted, his tone dropping, "you're skating dangerously close to obstruction. We're not here for a lecture on who belongs where." But Karen wasn't listening anymore. Her face contorted in frustration and fear, realizing the narrative she counted on, the one where she's the victim and I'm the threat, wasn't working. Then, as if to prove just how far gone she was, she tried a last-ditch move. "I want to press charges," she yelled. "I want him arrested." Daniels shook his head slowly. "You called us out under false pretenses, harassed your neighbor, and we have preliminary evidence of potential cybercrime. You're not in a position to demand anything right now." Karen's breath hitched. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She looked around, realizing everyone was watching, and none of them were on her side. Daniels took out his notepad. "You'll need to come with us while we continue our investigation. You can either cooperate voluntarily or—" "I'm not going anywhere," she snapped. But before she could turn back toward her house, Officer Grant stepped forward and gently, but firmly, reached for her arm. That's when she snapped completely. "You can't touch me," she shouted, wrenching herself away. "I'm a white woman. You don't get to manhandle me like I'm some thug." Gasps rippled from the onlookers. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel's expression turned to stone. "You really want to go down that road?" he asked quietly. Karen's eyes darted wildly, as if finally sensing that no one, not the neighbors, not the cops, not even her own narrative, was on her side anymore. But it was too late. She'd already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Officer Daniels didn't answer right away. He simply stared at Karen, his face unreadable, but his silence said everything. It was the kind of quiet that hangs in the air like a final warning. Then he slowly reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Daniels. We have a situation escalating. Requesting backup to 224 West Ridge Lane. Possible cybercrime suspect, currently non-compliant." Karen's mouth fell open. "You're calling backup? For me? Are you serious?" Grant, still standing beside her, took a small step closer, lowering his voice. "You really should calm down, ma'am. Right now you're not helping yourself." She looked around like she was searching for someone, anyone, to take her side. But the neighbors had gone quiet. Some still watched from behind fences or windows. A few had even pulled out their phones, clearly recording. Karen's voice trembled now, still loud but cracking at the edges. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. He's smart. He knows how to make it look like I did it. He probably hacked my tablet, and—" "You mean the same tablet that connected directly to his Wi-Fi router under your name?" Daniels asked sharply. "With a MAC address that matches your iPad and logs dating back 3 months?" Karen blinked rapidly. Grant chimed in. "We reviewed all the logs. The traffic led to accounts registered to emails traced back to your name. Not his. Yours. That's not a setup, that's a digital fingerprint." She shook her head, slowly at first, then frantically. No, this is a setup. I'm being framed. He's making this all up, he has a vendetta." Daniels turned to me. "Mr. Cole, you said you backed up the evidence?" "Right here." I stepped forward and handed him the USB drive. "Router logs. Screenshot archives. Folder structure. I left everything intact so you can see I didn't manipulate any of it." He nodded, taking the drive carefully. We'll submit this to the cybercrime unit. But based on what we've already reviewed, this is enough to justify a full warrant for digital forensics. Karen's voice turned shrill. You can't do that. That's my property. This is insane. I'm not the criminal here. He is. Grant tilted his head. Then why did you use his Wi-Fi without permission? I didn't know it was his, she blurted. A beat of silence passed. Daniels raised an eyebrow. So you admit you were using someone else's network? Karen's face contorted. She realized she just walked right into it. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. That doesn't make me a criminal. No, Daniels said slowly. But accessing someone's network without consent is a form of unauthorized use. And what you did while connected? That's where it gets serious. He pulled a small tablet from his vest and started taking notes. I watched as the Karen who once marched onto my lawn with smug superiority now stood like a cornered animal, panicked, twitchy, wild-eyed. And then, right on cue, she lunged. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't planned. It was pure, desperate rage. She threw herself toward me, arms outstretched, fingers curled like claws. You smug little liar! She screamed. You think you're better than me? You think you can ruin me? But she never reached me. Grant moved fast, too fast for her to react. He grabbed her wrist mid-lunge, pivoted, and twisted her arm behind her back with practiced ease. That's assault, he said, voice steady. On top of everything else. Karen shrieked like she was being tortured, thrashing as he pulled her arms behind her back and secured her with cuffs. You can't do this! You can't arrest me, I'm not the bad guy. You called the police on an innocent man, Daniels said firmly. You accused him of crimes you yourself appear to be committing. And now you just attempted physical assault in front of 2 uniformed officers and half the neighborhood. This isn't happening, she sobbed. This isn't real. He set me up. He must have planted that stuff, he had to. Grant didn't dignify it with a response. He just walked her to the cruiser slowly as she continued to spiral. Daniels turned to me. We're going to confiscate her device for forensic analysis. If everything on that USB checks out, she's looking at multiple charges: fraud, unauthorized access, possibly hate crimes, and depending on what that flag site was, even worse. I nodded grimly. I didn't want this. I just wanted to be left alone. I believe you, Daniels said. But you did the right thing backing everything up. Most people wouldn't have been that smart. Karen was still screaming from the back of the squad car. You can't do this to me. I have rights. I'll call my lawyer. I'll sue all of you. Daniels closed the car door, muffling her cries. Do you think justice was served? Vote with a thumbs up if Karen got exactly what she deserved. She had every chance to walk away, he muttered. I stared at the cruiser as it rolled down the street, Karen's pink SUV parked crookedly in her driveway, now a symbol of her delusions. Yeah, I said quietly. But entitlement doesn't know when to quit. The patrol car pulled away slowly, Karen's muffled screams still audible behind the glass. I stood there for a long moment, letting the silence settle. Officer Daniels gave me one last nod before heading to his cruiser, promising that someone from cybercrime would be in touch. As the 2 vehicles rolled down the street, the neighbors began to emerge, timidly at first, then in clusters. Some had been recording the entire encounter. Others just looked stunned, murmuring to one another as if waking up from a strange dream. That really happened, I heard someone whisper. She called the cops and got herself arrested, another neighbor said, shaking his head. Unreal. I turned back toward my house, exhaling slowly. Relief hadn't fully settled in yet, just a strange numbness. The last 48 hours had gone from slow internet to federal crimes, racial profiling, and an arrest in my front yard. It wasn't over. But the tide had turned. By the next morning, the news had spread like wildfire. The first video surfaced on a local Facebook group. It showed Karen shrieking, "I'm a white woman!" while being restrained. Within hours, the clip was shared across Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter. By noon, it had been stitched into a dozen commentary videos with titles like, "Another Karen Gets Owned," and "Woman Calls Cops on Neighbor, Ends Up in Cuffs." People couldn't get enough. It wasn't just the absurdity of the moment, it was the pattern. Another entitled person weaponizing the system and falling flat on her face when reality pushed back. Except this time, the twist was brutal. She hadn't just made a false report. She'd been hiding crimes behind someone else's internet connection. By evening, local news had picked up the story. The headline was unforgiving. "Cybercrime suspect arrested after false 911 call on neighbor. Allegations include fraud, identity theft, and hate speech." Karen's face, twisted in mid-scream, was plastered under the banner. And it didn't stop there. Someone leaked her HOA status. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was the HOA vice president. Within 24 hours, the board held an emergency meeting and released a statement. "Effective immediately, Karen Whitmore has been removed from her position on the HOA board. Her actions do not reflect the values of our community." Another blow. Then came the email chain. Apparently, Karen had been caught berating other residents in the past, but people had been too afraid, or too exhausted, to push back. Now, her victims were coming out in droves. One woman posted, "She told me to repaint my fence because it was too brown for the neighborhood vibe. I'm Latina." Another, "She used to accidentally send my packages to the wrong address every week. I found them on her porch twice." The stories kept piling up. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. I didn't do interviews. I didn't post commentary. I just watched. Let the truth spread on its own. My only public statement was a screenshot of the router interface with one line beneath it. "Sometimes, the Wi-Fi isn't the only thing someone's stealing." That post alone got over 100,000 likes. But it wasn't just the internet that turned on Karen. 3 days after her arrest, a foreclosure notice was taped to her front door. Turns out her legal fees were mounting fast, and without the backing of the HOA or community support, she was drowning. I heard through a neighbor that her lawyer dropped her after discovering what was on her devices. And yet, she still hadn't gone quietly. That Friday night, she showed up at my porch. I didn't open the door. I didn't need to. The doorbell cam caught the whole thing. Disheveled, wild-eyed, clutching a manila folder like it held her last ounce of dignity, she screamed at the camera. "You ruined my life! You set me up! You think you're safe? You think you won? This isn't over!" She didn't know it yet, but it was. The video went viral before the sun came up. This time, the caption was simple. "Still not learning." After that final meltdown on my porch, Karen was served with a restraining order the very next day. She never came near my property again. By the end of the month, the foreclosure went through. Her once pristine 2-story house, complete with rose bushes and tacky motivational signs, was auctioned off online. No one in the neighborhood shed a tear. In fact, someone left a little sign in her former yard that read, "Free Wi-Fi, just kidding." A week later, a young couple moved in. Friendly, quiet, respectful. They waved when they passed by, kept to themselves otherwise. The air around the block felt lighter. Like everyone had exhaled at once after holding their breath for too long. As for me, I went back to sipping coffee on my porch every morning, this time, with a faster internet connection and no strange devices clogging up my router. No more stolen bandwidth. No more false accusations. No more looking over my shoulder for someone who thought calling 911 was a weapon. Peace felt strange at first. But I welcomed it. The story never really left the internet. New reaction videos popped up for weeks. Karen's face became a meme in certain circles. Someone even animated the moment she screamed, "I'm a white woman!" in a TikTok skit that got millions of views. My inbox flooded with messages. "You handled that with class. You're a hero, bro. That Karen messed around and found out." But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a guy who got lucky, Lucky that I kept records, stayed calm, and had officers willing to listen. Because let's face it, if things had gone even slightly differently, I could have been the one in cuffs. All because I changed my own Wi-Fi password. That reality stuck with me. Still does. But it also reminded me, you have to stand your ground. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's unfair. Because truth matters. And when you've got it on your side, you don't need to yell. You just need to plug in the receipts. As I watched the sunset that evening, a soft breeze rolled across the porch. My phone buzzed. A friend sent me a screenshot of Karen's mugshot trending again. I chuckled and put the phone face down. Some things are worth letting go. But others? Others are worth saving. On a USB drive. Like stories where the entitled lose and the truth wins? Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs a reminder. Receipts always win. This story goes beyond being just another justice served moment. It delivers powerful life lessons, especially relevant to anyone who's ever faced unfair treatment, bias, or entitled behavior in their community. First, it underscores the value of staying calm and collecting evidence. In today's world, where false accusations can spiral quickly, having the presence of mind to document the truth can mean the difference between becoming a victim or setting the record straight. Second, it serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked privilege. When someone believes they're untouchable, whether because of status, appearance, or position, they're more likely to cross lines they think don't apply to them. But entitlement has a breaking point, and the crash is often public and irreversible. Finally, it's a reminder that justice might take time, but truth carries weight. By refusing to be provoked, by standing firm with facts instead of fury, good people don't just protect themselves, they shine a light on behavior that thrives in the shadows. The ultimate takeaway? Don't underestimate the power of a calm mind, a strong case, and a well-timed USB drive. Sometimes, that's all it takes to bring down a bully.